welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, or one of them, Jessica. I'm here with my illustrious co-host.
Hey, I'm Jen.
And we are here with somebody we have been so excited to interview. I think people are probably really tired of us being like, guess what? Guess who we're talking to? Please introduce yourself. Tell us about, what you've done and about this book that's coming out next week or this week as of this podcast.
Hello, my name is Gruncle Stan. I run a place called the Mystery Shack. If you like mysteries, that's the shack to go to. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm Alex Hirsch. I'm the creator of the Disney television show Gravity Falls, and I have written several books for the show, including Journal Number 3 and Gravity Falls Lost Legends. And I have a new book coming out, The Book of Bill, which is a book that is evil and no one should read it, and it's going to piss off parents and religious leaders alike. And I hope everybody buys it.
So I really quickly, I kind of want to start off with that. So when I pitch Gravity Falls to people, and I do have many, many friends who have watched it on their own and then grown into watching it with their kids or vice versa. Whenever I'm like, have you watched it? And people are like, what is it? And I'm like, it's basically baby's first cosmic horror.
Sure.
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
Is that sort of, when this world kind of first came to you, was that sort of what you were going for? Did you think of it as something that would sort of transcend generations the way that it has?
Well, to give context, I was pretty fresh out of college. I was 25. I'd never written a script before, let alone run a television show before. So I wasn't really doing the Babe Ruth thing where I point to the bleachers and say that's what I intend to make. I was just sort of flying by the seat of my pants and trying to ask myself what's something that I would want to watch. I think I had originally tended to be in adult television, but I had sort of gotten my first early break with Disney. They asked me to pitch them a show, and I tried to ask myself, what's a kid's show that I would have loved as a kid, but that I would watch now? And the only thing that could come to mind was sort of mining my childhood memories of my love of, I grew up in the 90s. So we had the X-Files, and we had, all the Spielberg and Amblin movies, and we had, Men in Black and the Weekly World News, before our modern moment, before the rise of, QAnon and stuff. Conspiracies had a kind of cute, folksy Americana ridiculousness about them. They were sort of silly and campy. And in the early days of the internet, it sort of felt like telling ghost stories with your friends. And so that was, growing up, I was obsessed with UFOs. There was a big circle in the center of the blacktop in the playground where kids would play dodgeball. And when the kids would leave and recess was over, I would lay down in the circle, face up at the sky, hoping a UFO would abduct me because it seemed like a perfect landing spot. This is how I coped with the anxieties of childhood and puberty, was sort of fantasies about, the Loch Ness Monster and gnomes and subliminal messages. And so when I had an opportunity to make my own show, I thought, okay, I'm going to make a show about those things. But my number one goal, as I was hiring writers and friends from college and other artists, was make something we're proud of. Even though we don't have a lot of time, even though we don't have a lot of money, even though we have a lot of restrictions with the company and the brand, even though we have censors telling us that every single thing that makes us laugh, we have to cut. Let's try our damnedest to make something that we love. Because, how often do you get a chance to run a television show? It was like, okay, I won the lottery. I better make the most of this. If I never get another chance, I want to be proud of it. And I didn't sleep for 5 years. And I did my best. And then afterwards, you sit back and the audience tells you what you made. You don't know what you made until the audience tells you. And the audience said, hey, this resonated with us. This reminded us of our childhoods. This made us laugh. This made us care. This reminded me of my sister. This reminded me of my favorite summer. And all that effort and love that we just jammed into that project it was a huge relief and a huge reward that people could feel it, even with all the limitations, even with the things that we wish we could have done better, even with the incredibly brutal, fast pace of television where you're just pumping these episodes out all on top of each other. I was writing and helping with the storyboards and approving the acting. I was directing the actors. I was also voicing half the characters. So it was a kind of like a 5-year manic episode. And then you come out of it and say, what did we make? And I'm, the fact that it resonates with so many people is, I think, a testament to the hard work of the crew and all of us just really putting our feet to the fire and asking ourselves, like, do we like this? Can this be better? And let's use everyone's talents to try to make it better.
Yeah, to follow up on that, I recently read another interview you did where you talked about one of your favorite shows growing up, The Simpsons, and how you really appreciated that it didn't talk down to its audience, that it treated the kid viewers like not like adults, but it put faith in them to understand and to grow up to understand the show itself. And I think that Gravity Falls is very much like that you can approach it at any age level and get something out of it. And I'm wondering if you think that kind of like engenders like a deeper and longer connection to the material, because like you can visit it and get something new out of it at every life phase.
Yeah, well, definitely my favorite things growing up, things like The Simpsons or Calvin and Hobbes. You read them when you're 5, you read them when you're 9, you read them when you're 19, you read them when you're 29, and you get something out of them every single time. I find, as somebody who has worked in sort of family television, that the projects that tend to have legs that really last are the ones where the younger sibling wants to watch what the older sibling's watching, even if they feel like they're getting away with something, rather than the show that, there will be a show that a kid in 3rd grade, she's like, oh my God, I love this show. And then in 4th grade, people are like, oh, isn't that your favorite show? She's like, I don't watch that. That's for babies. Like there's this hard cutoff. And, no disrespect to people who make something for a very targeted age group. That's hard to do and hard to do well. And there are amazing shows like Bluey that everybody loves. So no disrespect to that. But I definitely, again, we really weren't thinking about age groups when we were making the show. We were thinking about like, what is going to be rewarding? What is going to be rewarding to the audience? What's making us laugh? I think I may have said this before, but I'm kind of a man child. So if I like this, then probably a man and a child will both enjoy it. If I contain, the silly and the sophisticated, if I contain the, cultured and uncultured together, then hopefully there's something for everyone in there. But we really weren't thinking about a hypothetical target audience that we didn't know. We were using ourselves as the audience. So you pitch the jokes to the room of all your favorite artists and writers, and if they laugh, it's good enough. And you don't worry about the rest of it, because there's no way to guess, like, what is a 11-year-old in Iowa, in this particular demographic bracket going to think about this random reference to Jean-Paul Sartre in the 3rd act of the 10th. You just don't think about it. Just have fun,
So that said, how did this come about? How did, of course, as soon as I saw, oh, there's a new Gravity Falls book coming out, and it's from Bill's point of view, and it's for adults, how did all of those pieces fall into place?
Yeah, well, we did journal number 3 for Gravity Falls. It was this extraordinary bestseller. It continues to sell incredibly well. I'm shocked because, that book is essentially a tie-in monster manual for a show that hasn't been making new episodes for 8 years. And I'll see it in airports. It's still just, it's this evergreen seller. And I think I credit that to, me and Rob really tried to make it, even though it was sort of a monster manual, it also told a narrative. And it was also a nice companion piece to the series, which, thanks to Disney Plus, people continue to discover it. Kids discover it now, and they don't know it's not new. It's new to them. And I think we tried to make it feel mostly timeless enough that it doesn't necessarily immediately jump out as being as old as it is at this point. But so, journal number 3 did wonderful. So Disney Publishing wanted to make more books with me. We did the comic, Gravity Falls Lost Legends, and that did pretty well as well. And as I was moving on to other projects, Disney asked me, do you want to make more books? Do you want to make journal number 2? And I said, well, no, canonically, there's nothing really interesting that happens in journal number 2. That's just, that's just Uncle Ford collecting mushroom spores for 600 pages like that. all the action happens in journal 3. I can't write that book. That doesn't make any sense narratively. And they said, well, can you do this story? Can you do that story? Or write a book about what happens after Gravity Falls. I'm like, no, guys, I ended the story. The story's ended. I'm not going to break the ending just because you want to fill your publishing slot and look impressive to your boss and put on your PowerPoint, look, we've got a new Gravity Falls book, So they kept saying, well, is there any Gravity Falls book you would do? And I said, well, yeah, I would do like an evil Bible written from the perspective of Bill, full of like just terrible advice, just like sociopathic, evil nonsense. And they said, we're not going to publish that. That's insane. Are you crazy? And I said, yeah, no, you're right. That I understand. You'd probably get in trouble, but that's the only thing that sounds fun to me because, that's a perspective that I know how to write. And, Bill's got a lot to say. And they said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And I said, all right. And then maybe 5 years later, a new department of Disney was publishing was spearheaded, and they called me up and they said, hey, do you still want to do that Bill book? And I said, are you guys kidding? Really? You want to do that? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm really busy, so I probably can't. And they said, oh, we'll really try to give you resources and, have a decent budget. And we'll even put a label on the front that says, create some kind of warning. So you could maybe, be a little bit less concerned about X, Y, or Z. And I checked under the hood and they seemed sincere. So I thought, oh, sure. Okay, fuck it. I've got a lot of other projects and I'm a pretty busy guy, but I love the world of Gravity Falls and I miss my artists. And I was like, this is a chance to work with my artists again. And, those voices of those characters are all still alive in my head every day. Gruncle Stan, Seuss, Mabel, Dipper, Bill, Old Man McGucket. The show didn't end to me. Like, as I'm walking about my house, I'm like, looking for my keys. Oh, dude, where'd my keys go? The characters are alive for me. So it's not hard to sit down and just say, okay, what's going on in their minds? So, I approached it as a kind of fun opportunity to get in touch with some of the old Gravity Falls crew and as a little sort of gift to give the fans, here on the sort of now 11th anniversary of the series premiere. I'm so grateful that the fans continue to love the show, watch the show, make fan art. It means so much to me. Like, the fans have given me everything. Like, here I am in a house that I can only afford because, the fans continue to show up for me and I want to show up for them. So this is sort of a, like a little dessert. It's not a new season. It's not, it's not some sort of universe breaking reimagining of anything. It's this sort of absurd experiment of what would happen if Bill could get his hands on a book. And, when I'm writing these characters, it doesn't really feel like I'm making choices. It feels like I'm tuning into a radio station and just seeing what they have to say. And it surprises me. This thing's chaotic as hell. There's elements of it that are hardly even book-like. It's very weird. It's what would happen if Bill invaded your book. And I had a lot of fun working with the team, and I hope people enjoy it. The trouble with Bill is he's a screeching, graceless, sociopathic asshole. And that could be a lot to take for 5 minutes, let alone 200 and something pages. But I hope that we balanced it in such a way that it is fun and full of weird secrets and mysteries that I hope will satisfy.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm very, very excited to read this. I'm curious about, crafting his perspective and that chaotic voice.
Yeah, I mean, the truth about Bill is he would not have the attention span to actually sit down and write a book. Bill his mind is kind of occupied in multiple dimensions at once. He's got a little bit of an ability to see a little bit of the future, a little bit of the past. He's all over the place. And even as he is delivering some seductive deal to you, in his mind, he's also like, it's like playing a paddle ball and like doing backflips. Like he's so chaotic. And so, any book that Bill would occupy would embody his chaos. He would randomly snap his fingers and say, I'm bored of this section. Now it's trout. Now it's just a pile of trout. Like it's going to be sort of non-linear, and it's going to be he's going to contradict himself, and you're going to have to try to suss out what is true and what isn't. And there are other perspectives in the book other than Bill's of what might be going on, and I leave it to the reader to to try to pick through what is a lie, what is true, and more interestingly, what is something that Bill says that's a lie literally, but is a truth metaphorically. Because I think sociopaths, cult leaders, they're such narcissists that they often tell on themselves, even when they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. They can't help it. They'll kind of admit to something they've done because they sort of want the credit, and then they'll create plausible deniability and act like it never happened. I don't know if you guys watched The Jinx, but Robert Durst, the rich serial killer lunatic who got away with killing 3 people because juries are convinced by lawyers with Texan accents, apparently. Robert Durst with The Jinx, he got away with 3 murders, and he would have gone to his grave with those 3 murders. But they made a documentary, and they said, "Can we interview you?" And he's like, "Of course you can. You need to hear my side of the story," because he's so convinced that he's a genius. He can't help himself. They say that murderers often return to the scene of the crime. Well, that's a crazy thing to do, but there's this ego involved. So, a character like Bill is going to deny 100 things while kind of hiding a confession inside those denials. And that seemed interesting to me to explore.
So I know you've used codes in other books, so there's going to be different codes for readers to decipher in this one as well?
It's not Gravity Falls without codes. It's not Gravity Falls without hidden secrets, without hidden jokes, without hidden connections. And I've learned through experience that there is no Easter egg too well hidden. There's no crevice of the planet that I could hide a secret that my fans will not dig it up and find it. So as I raise the bar and they meet it, I must raise the bar again and continue to challenge myself to try to find new ways to hide things in plain sight. I won't speak to any specifics, but I will say, we really challenged ourselves to ask if Bill is the most cryptic character in the Gravity Falls universe. What are cryptic ways in which he might express himself in this book? Again, I can't spoil any of it or talk about it now. And I hope there's things in there that don't get found for years. But we will see. The fans are brilliant. And when you hook them all together, they become like neurons in one massive hive mind. And, if they found every single thing I hid in the first hour of it coming out, I would not be surprised. But there's some things in there I think might take a while.
In crafting this book, just to sort of like return to your statement about like not really writing for a particular audience, did this one, when you introduced the chaos factor and just sort of like the general messed upness of Bill and his perspective, were you consciously writing for adults for this, or was this another example of like it's going to be what it's going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be what it's going to be. I don't make those distinctions. I'm utterly disinterested in those types of labels. The label on the cover that's like Dimensions for older readers, whatever, that's publishing trying to cover their ass. That's not me saying I want to write an adult book. That's me saying I want to write a book of Bill. And a book of Bill, he's a demon. He's a sociopath. He's going to be giving the reader terrible advice. Now I'll say there's plenty of things that I wrote that then I deleted, not because I was trying to protect children or because I was worried about Disney's brand, but because I had to ask myself, if they're going to print 1 million copies of this book, do I have a responsibility to be careful? I'll give you an example. When I say like, when you write these characters, sometimes you just turn a switch and see what they say. Oftentimes Bill would say stuff that I'm like, I don't think it is responsible to have that in 1 million books. A random example off the top of my head, I can't remember what section it was. But Bill was saying, something to the effect of, the government's trying to hide all these secrets from you. They're trying to keep you from the truth. they always say that you're not supposed to stick your hand inside a garbage disposal. What are they trying to hide? What secrets are in the garbage disposal? I mean, maybe they've got a good reason, but maybe there's something amazing down there. I mean, why else would they be telling you can't reach your hand in there? I mean, but that's just a thought, I mean, you don't have to do it, but man, it's perfectly hand sized. I mean, there might be gold down there, but what am I talking about? And it's like, I'm like, I would feel fine with, in an R-rated movie, a character saying that, sure. In a book that I know children will wind up reading and deranged adults will wind up reading, if 1 in a million people are like, oh, that's funny, Bill is encouraging the reader to stick their hand in a garbage disposal. One person might be like, oh, I'm going to make a TikTok where I'm like, look, he says I'm not supposed to do it. Oh, fuck, it's actually on. And then I'm liable for that, So it's like, unfortunately, the true Bill, can only show itself in little bits. Like I do have to sand the edges a little bit, because I don't want to be, I don't want to be sued for somebody imitating his horrible advice. So it's, it's a line. I mean, there was a line in there, where it was like a bit of copyright material in the book, and it's all the fine print is totally ridiculous, of course. And it was Bill saying, for more good advice, something effective. For more good advice, take all the unlabeled bottles under your sink, pour them in a big jug down the hatch. And again, Disney's like, we can't print that. And I was like, fair. I'm not going to argue with this one. I'm not going to throw a big fight. Like, it's a balancing act. So there was never me thinking about adults versus kids. There was me thinking of, this is a author directly instructing a reader to do terrible things. There's a balancing act to the perfect version of a Bill monologue is one where he is telling on himself through his psychosis, rather than truly convincing the reader to perhaps commit acts of stochastic terrorism, especially in today's modern climate. It's a balance. So again, I never thought about adults versus kids. I only thought about, let me write the most true Bill that I can. And then I would look at that and say, is this something that I can't justify actually printing? Now, there may still be things in there that that get people in trouble or piss people off. You never know. I tried to strike the balance. We will find out. We will see.
So really quickly, I also want to just chat a little bit about, again, the cultural impact of just Gravity Falls and coming to this point that we are now having this book from Bill's perspective, and that we're also seeing Summerween celebrated
it's wild.
Throughout. We have I got ads for Summerween in my inbox, and my kids' camp is celebrating Summerween next week, and they are super, super excited about it. That has got to be absolutely wild to you.
Yeah, I mean, it all happened really fast. I mean, like when Gravity Falls came out, it was a hit immediately. And it went from, I didn't have any idea if anyone was going to watch it to everyone was watching it. And I was having my comedy heroes reach out to me. I watched The Daily Show every single day in high school and college. I didn't miss a single day. And Jon Stewart's telling me he's watching the show with his kids and doing a Gruncle Stan impression around the house. Like they're, podcasts and fan art and tattoos and costumes and cosplay. And like, it all just at once blew up. And I assumed it would really die down once the show is continued. But again, I think thanks to Disney Plus putting it on streaming, and I think, again, thanks to the hard work of our crew to really try to make these episodes stand the test of time, it continues to be rediscovered and delight people. And I just feel nothing but gratitude for it, because you have no idea how your efforts are going to be received. And as an artist and as a writer and a creator, sometimes you work really hard on something and people they don't give a shit. It's like it never happened, and sometimes people actively hate the thing you make and pick it apart for reasons to maybe assume that you're a monster. So, to have people love a thing, I'll never stop being grateful for it. I'll never take it for granted. I'm delighted every single time I see a Bill tattoo or hear that something like Summerween has taken off. And again, it's sort of that continued appreciation and gratitude that's part of why every now and then when I can fit it into my schedule, I try to do something like this as a little like, hey guys, I still love you too. You know what I mean? I care about this world, and I love this world. I just want to sort of protect its integrity while continuing to show my appreciation and play around with it when and where I can.
You've written for this world across so many different types of media, for TV animation, for prose, for graphic novels. Do you feel like you have media left to conquer still?
Media left to conquer. When we were working on season 2 of Gravity Falls, and it was really blowing up, I knew I was finishing the story. I knew that was my last season. There was no debate in my mind. It wasn't, season 1 was so taxing and difficult. And I had an ending in mind that when it was time to do season 2, I knew this is the end of this story. And it was going so well that midway through the season, the company asked me, would you have any interest in a Gravity Falls movie? And I said, oh, I would do a Gravity Falls movie, but it would have to be a movie. Like, I'm not interested in doing one of these like TV movies that's just a long episode where the budget's the same and often the pacing is weird because you didn't have movies are really hard. They're their own art form. They require iteration, they require test screenings, they require a bigger team, a bigger budget, the music, the art. There's a lot of things that go along with that. And if what they're calling a movie is just an episode stretched out, just stretching me thin, that doesn't feel like media I have yet to conquer. That just feels like more stuff on my plate. So I said, if you were interested in doing a real movie, I would make the conclusion of Gravity Falls a movie, like a proper movie. Give me 50 million, 60 million, maybe theatrical. Streaming wasn't really a thing yet. So I guess, I don't know, but I was like, I would do a movie for you guys. I would end it with a movie. And they said, no, that's not what we're talking about. I said, okay, never mind. I'll conclude the story as I envisioned. And then, later they said, after the show was over, they're like, are you interested in a Gravity Falls movie? And I'm like, I finished the story. That would have been the movie. But hey, if you've got $80 million and you're willing to let me work with the actual Disney animators from the feature side, I might be able to think of a one-off story that creates a big new adventure. But again, it would have to be a movie, not just a long episode. And they're like, oh, never mind. It's one of these things where it's like, my interest in it is very dependent on the medium. Like, part of why I was excited to do a comic was I've never written a comic before. I would love to try that. Part of why I wanted to do the Book of Bill is like, oh, this one character perspective thing, and the art's going to be really experimental. Like, I'm really creatively restless, and so something that feels like a new precipice for me gets me really hyped. I'm most interested in doing things if I don't entirely know if I can pull it off, because then I'm always learning. And then I'm really activated. Just sort of doing the same thing over and over again, I grow restless. If there was an opportunity for a movie that felt like a real movie, it's something that I could consider. I do have some stories in my mind that I think could be appropriate for that. I'm working at Netflix right now, writing a feature that I'm not allowed to talk about. But I'm in that world right now. I would love to work on a video game, desperately love to work on a game. Gravity Falls was really my attempt to sort of smuggle a game into a show, with all the codes and riddles and the giant ARG that I created after the series. Like, that's me expressing my love of interactivity. Like, my dream for media is that it rewards the audience in direct proportion to the attention they pay to it. So we were talking about The Simpsons earlier. You can watch that, while eating dinner, while talking to a friend, and catch the jokes, or you could watch it really closely and catch the sort of the pathos of it and the comedy, or you could freeze frame it and discover all these little funny gags that are only there for a sec. The more you give to it, the more it gives back. Shows like Arrested Development that have all these interconnections, or Community. Like, that's my favorite media, and my favorite video games growing up. When I first discovered that Donkey Kong Country 2 had an entire hidden world if you collected all the DK coins. Like, oh my God, the more I dig, the more gold I'll find. It bonds me to the piece of media itself. It makes me feel like I'm seen, like I'm a crazy obsessive person. No one would ever think to the level starts and you're supposed to go right. I'm going to go left. I'm going to be sneaky. Oh my God, there's a secret when you go left. They knew that I was going to do that, and they had a reward for me. Like, I want the things I create to feel that way. And games are games and kind of live experiences, things like Meow Wolf or whatever, are like the most sort of extreme example of that sort of expanded narrative that you can climb into it and you can play with it and you can dig and you can find. And so, I would love to work on a game. I would love to, I mean, my God, if I won $1 billion, in some sort of freak, I don't know, crypto exchange or something tomorrow, and for some reason, Bob Iger had a stroke and decided to sell me Gravity Falls, like if I had the resources, this is not a joke, I would build an actual scale mystery shack in the woods. Like, I would make it an extraordinary theme park. I would run it and I would be happy for the rest of my life. And I would fill it full of secrets and mysteries, and I would have an escape room, and I'd have treasure hunts annually. Like, that's what I would do if I had the resources. I don't. So instead I make very weird books with very weird things hidden inside them. But no, rewarding, interactive, immersive, puzzling things that that give back to the audience as much as the audience give to them. That's the stuff that gets me excited.
That's so funny, because you actually kind of covered what my last question was, or my last just comment. And maybe possibly it's self-indulgent, but it sounds like it's on your plane as well. I would adore a Call of Cthulhu-esque game in the world of Gravity Falls, where, obviously the cosmic gods are Bill and his friends and whatever. I feel like that would be so super fun, coming from a family of gamers.
Sure. Is Call of Cthulhu, is that a board game or a video game?
It's a board game. It's role playing. It's basically like Dungeons
Yes.
and Dragons, where you go crazy if you make the wrong rolls.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Board games are like kind of this surprising gap in my sort of nerd repertoire. I've only played Dungeons and Dragons once, and it was for like 5 minutes. And I left because the DM and the other player kept arguing about how many dogs of war you were allowed to have, and I was like, I can't track this. So it's like one of those things where everybody has, like, there's all these things that, like, a nerd, it's like, oh, you're supposed to have read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you're supposed to have seen The Princess Bride, and then you meet somebody who hasn't read one of those or seen one of those, and you're like, how is that possible? And like, I'm like that for like Dungeons and Dragons and sort of tabletop gaming. It kind of missed me, that it grazed me. But like, I have many friends who are deep into that. And I've heard that before, that there's people who feel like Gravity Falls could be a really wonderful sort of framework or palette for a game like that. I try not to bite the hand that feeds too hard. But sometimes it could be more like a love bite, like when a dog kind of pulls at your arm, but it's not trying to hurt you. Like, when I came to Disney, they had not yet purchased Marvel or Star Wars. So when I first came to Disney, it was possible to make a cartoon show and have merchandise. Phineas and Ferb, which came right before me, they had like Phineas and Ferb macaroni and an ice show. And if Gravity Falls had come a few years earlier, we could have had some real merchandise. But boom, they buy Marvel, boom, they buy Star Wars. Our tiny little satellite making these little shows on their little channel mean nothing to corporate at large. And so really, any kind of tie-in merchandise with Gravity Falls, it was always an uphill battle. It was always me and the team begging. Can we do this? Can we do that? And getting a shrug of indifference, like, the catering budget for this Marvel movie is more than we are willing to spend on even making a PowerPoint to assess how much it would cost to make a board game or whatever, and often the thing that would be made would be incredibly cheap without any feedback from me. I would learn about it at the same time everyone else would. It would be, some strange toy that was sold in some weird corner that it wasn't on model. And it's a real shame, because, I know that there's all these smaller companies and vendors that make, beautiful vinyl toys and incredible sort of collectible artisanal stuff, that if Disney would only license the brand to them, they would foot the bill, make the thing, sell the thing, share the profits. And it's just, we're such not a priority to the company that they won't. And because they own it, like, I would literally take every dollar that I was paid for the Book of Bill, and if I was allowed, use it to fund and sell my dream Gravity Falls merchandise, even if I didn't make a penny, because I love that stuff. But I don't own the rights. Disney does, and they don't really care. So I've been lucky that the publishing side, because we wanted to do a Journal 3 when we were working on the show, and they said, "What are you talking about?" And it wasn't until the show was just ending that they really were like, "Oh, this might be a seller." And because it sold so well, they've continued to ask for more books. But we never really got to make a product where I was involved, like I was involved with Journal number 3 with the right team. If we had made a product that was really considered, made with the right team and the love of me, the creator, and it had a hit, then they would say, "Oh, look, toys do sell." But that department was too busy, cranking out, Thor and, Captain America. So, no Gravity Falls board game for now, at least.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful. I do want to thank the publishing side of Disney for setting this up and being so generous, and especially for you for being so generous with your time. I know you are super busy.
Oh yeah, no, I'm happy to, like I said, these projects, these weird little things we create, they're like an anniversary present to someone you're in a relationship with. You know what I mean? It's like, thank you for still being a fan. I still care. I stopped off at the flower shop. I got you a bouquet of chaos. Hopefully you enjoy.
Well, this book will be available in stores and at least our public library for sure. Our director is a massive Gravity Falls fan. So we will, Syosset Public Library, if any public library, it would definitely be us, have it on our shelves. But everybody head on out, buy the Book of Bill, go crazy. Don't put your hand in a garbage disposal though. Not a good idea.
Is this, I know we're on Zoom right now. Is this going to be played as audio? Is there going to be a video component to this?
We usually just use audio. We just find that video makes a better conversation.
Oh, great.
If you want it to be video, we can, but
I'm probably not doing video, but I'm going to show you a page from the book that the readers aren't going to be able to see. So don't say what you see here, but here's a fascinating image.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Whatever that is, I won't give you any context, but enjoy the chaos of it.
Oh, I see something and I'm not going to say what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, is that? Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Thank you. It was a thrill. And thank you for also continuing the written word and the concept of a book as a thing that is relevant to our lives. I love books, especially as digital media and streaming continues to be this ethereal cloud where they delete shows out of existence. The importance of physical media now feels stronger than ever. I love holding a book in my hands. I love the smell of it. I love putting it on my shelf. I love using it as a weapon.
Yes.
It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for being part of keeping books alive.
And thank you very much. This was Jessikah with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My co-host was...
I'm Jen. Goodbye.
And our guest was...
Gruncle Stan. See you at the Mystery Shack, kids. Bye!
Bye, Gruncle Stan.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.